Welcome back, everybody, to Dead Air. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I hope you're having a wonderful evening, and I hope you're ready to be horrified, because today we're going into spring, Easter, religious holidays such as Easter, and if horror does one thing really well, it's taking iconic figures in history, in religion, and turning them upside down. And today is no different. We are talking about The Omen from 1976. Now, this is an iconic movie. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it before I go over it today. And come back and you can watch this on my YouTube. You can watch this on our app, KC24 and CBS 47 Plus. And I want you to just really look at this movie and critique it well, because this movie is very good. It's very well made, and I think it's something to really go in the history books of horror.
But it is history.
So, without further ado, we're going to go over The Omen. American diplomat Robert Thorne and his wife Catherine are living in Rome, where Catherine gives birth to a boy. Robert is told his baby died after one breath by Father Spoleto, the hospital chaplain. Spoleto persuades Robert to secretly adopt another baby, whose mother also died in childbirth that night. Robert does not tell Catherine that the child is not their own, and they name him Damien.
If I may suggest, it even resembles. Your wife need never know. It would be a blessing to her and to the child.
5 years later, Robert is ambassador to the United Kingdom in London when a series of mysterious events plague the Thornes. A menacing Rottweiler appears at their home. Damien's nanny publicly hangs herself during his 5th birthday party. A new nanny named Mrs. Baylock arrives unexpectedly. Damien violently resists entering a church, and animals at a safari park are terrified by his presence.
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
Stop. Damien. Damien. Drive on.
Robert receives visits from a Father Brennan who warns him about Damien's origins, stating he is not human and insisting Robert take Holy Communion. He later tells Robert that Damien is the son of Satan, that Catherine is pregnant, and that Damien will kill his unborn sibling and parents. After Robert dismisses it all and leaves, Father Brennan is killed by a falling church spire hit by lightning. Catherine tells Robert she wants an abortion, which he opposes. Damien knocks Catherine over a railing to the floor below, hospitalizing her and causing her to miscarry. Photographer Keith Jennings notices shadows in photographs of the nanny and Father Brennan that presage their deaths, then sees a similar mark across himself in a later photo. Keith shows Robert the photos along with news clippings and biblical passages from Father Brennan, suggesting the coming of the Antichrist. He accompanies Robert to Rome to investigate Damien's birth. They learn that a fire destroyed the hospital, including Catherine's maternity records, and killed the staff on duty. They find Father Spoleto in a monastery, severely burned, mute, blind in one eye, and partially paralyzed. He directs them to the cemetery where Damien's biological mother is buried. In the grave of Damien's mother, Robert and Keith find a jackal carcass, and in the next plot, a child's skeleton with a shattered skull. Robert realizes that the child was his own son, murdered so that Damien could take his place.
Murdered him. They murdered him as soon as he was born. Murderers. Murderers.
A pack of Rottweilers drives Robert and Keith from the cemetery. Robert calls Catherine in the hospital to tell her that she must leave London. Before she can do so, Mrs. Baylock throws Catherine to her death from the window of her room. Robert and Keith travel to meet with Antichrist exorcism expert Carl Bugenhagen in Jerusalem, who says that if Damien is the true Antichrist, he will bear a birthmark in the shape of 3 6s. Carl gives Robert 7 daggers with which to kill Damien on hallowed ground. Robert refuses to do so, but Keith remains convinced of its necessity. Shortly afterward, Keith is decapitated by a sheet of glass from a truck. Horrified, Robert reluctantly accepts his task. Robert finds the birthmark on the sleeping Damien's scalp and is attacked by Miss Baylock, whom he fatally stabs. Armed with the daggers, Robert drives Damien to a local cathedral. His erratic driving draws the attention of the police. Robert drags a screaming Damien onto the altar to kill him and begs God to forgive him. But the police arrive on the scene and shoot him as he brandishes the dagger. A double funeral is attended by the U.S. President and the First Lady. As the camera pans out, it is revealed that the funeral is Robert's and Catherine's. Meanwhile, Damien, standing with the first couple, turns and smiles at the camera.
Excuse me, Mr. President. When you're ready to leave, your car is right over there.
In a moment.
Yes, sir.
So now we are on to Siena's thoughts. We've got Siena's thoughts. Whether you like them or not, we've got Siena's thoughts. I once again added the flair. I hope you guys liked it. So, this is a drastic change from the type of movies we've been talking about. This is a much more serious feeling horror movie, and it sort of delves into a different type of horror than I think that a lot of people are normally used to. So this is based in the 1970s, 1976. So you have that moral panic aspect of it. And so a lot of the things that I want to go over are based towards that. So let's start with my initial thoughts, and then I want to go over the big themes in this movie. So first, I want to talk about the gore in this movie, because I feel like gore is a very big deal to me in a horror movie. And this movie, honestly, really lacks a lot of gore. So you're not going to see the blood and the guts and that type of gore. You're going to feel, and you're going to see something a lot more haunting and a lot scarier, in my opinion, because I feel like a lot of it is more based in real life, in sort of a reality aspect. So first, you have the nanny kill.
Me, Damien? It's all for you!
You're seeing her hang herself, which is, yes, it's horrifying, but it's not necessarily gory. So she hangs herself and then she goes through the window that's connected to her. So that initially is very scary, but it's not gory. So yes, we have so our next kill is Father Brennan, who is killed by a church spire that was struck by lightning. And so again, you're not really seeing the blood, the guts. You literally just see the spear go through him and then it cuts. And to me, that is so interestingly tasteful for this movie. I think that if you had tried to make this movie any gorier, I don't think it would have particularly landed very well. So then you also get the death of the photographer, who helps Robert more towards the end. And he gets decapitated by a window pane. So again, I feel like this is, again, you're not seeing the blood, the guts, or anything like that. You're not seeing all of that type of gore. You're seeing, it's very clean, if I say so myself. You see the window pane decapitate him, and that's kind of it. You don't see all the, like I said, all the blood and all that sort of thing, and that's pretty interesting. And you see Catherine die as well, and again, not super gory. She falls to her death on a car, she falls to her death, I believe, in an ambulance. So. Again, it's not super gory. You're not seeing all the blood, all the guts and such. Which is very interesting, and it's a very different take for this movie that I really enjoy. Because sometimes a movie doesn't necessarily call for all the gore, all the blood and such. It calls for something a little bit more tasteful and more connected to the movie. And so I feel like they did very well with that in this movie. Gregory Peck is somebody who's very well known within the movie sphere in just other types of movies, not necessarily horror movies, I would say. And so this is very cool and very interesting to see him in a different type of movie that many people aren't used to him in. So I loved that aspect of it. I love it when a horror movie, takes actors from a different genre and really plays with them in the horror movie. And in this case, I think it very much worked out well for them. So another aspect that I really want to talk about is the actual horror of it. So really, to me, I think this movie touches upon a real horror that a lot of people feel and fear. And so I feel like the fact that you're taking this innocent child and you find out that he's actually the Antichrist, I think that hits home for a lot of people. And it goes into really our first big theme, which is the corruption of innocence. So this is what really makes the movie deeply unsettling, is a child, which is typically a symbol of purity, of innocence, actually being the embodiment of evil, is pretty scary. And so Damien Thorne flips the idea of innocence on its head in this movie, and it's making you question whether evil is something learned or something that you're really born into. Maybe it's Maybelline. And I think that this movie does it so incredibly well. Another theme I think that this movie really touches well upon is fate versus your free will. So one of the core tensions is whether destiny can actually be avoided. So I think that Robert Thorne really spends the entire film trying to wrestle with
Be careful who you try to play games with. Oh my God! Randy Orton! Oh, the casket!
With this and trying to outrun this prophecy, but every step that he ends up taking pushes him closer to it and pushes him more towards the destiny that he's supposed to meet. And so, to me, this movie ends on really the biggest question is whether it was ever a possibility for him to change his destiny, to change his fate. So I think that is really important to look and pay attention to within this movie. So I think another theme in this movie that is really interesting to me is the religion and the apocalypse anxiety that I think a lot of people had during the 70s. So this movie leans hard into the biblical horror, specifically the idea of the Antichrist and the end times prophecy. So it taps into fears rooted in the book of Revelations and reflecting a broader cultural anxiety of the 70s when people were really obsessed with the apocalypse and that sort of thing. And I think this is really interesting because you also get the moral panic within like rock and roll and that sort of thing during this time. And so I think this movie really taps into that anxiety, and again, like I said before, it does it very well. Our last theme that I really want to go to, these aren't the only these are not the only themes within this movie. I just feel like these are the biggest ones. If you, of course, see other themes within this movie, please share them with me. Comment on my posts on Instagram and on my YouTube channel, please. I love it when you guys do that. So another theme that we get is parenthood and denial.
Denial is a river in Egypt.
Really. So at its core, it's this movie is about refusing to accept the truth about their child, Robert and Catherine. So Robert's emotional conflict to protect his son versus save the world is something that is incredibly difficult to go through and something that he really struggles throughout this movie. So this film is exploring how far denial can go when love is involved. So to me, this is very interesting, and I do enjoy this aspect of the movie where you can actually see Robert and Catherine, to an extent, really struggle with, okay, is this really my child, or is this actually the Antichrist? And you can see sort of the different points of view in this movie where it's like, oh my God, he's so cute. He's just a little boy. That's my son. And then something happens and you're like, is that my son though? And it's like, it's a very interesting perspective that you can see throughout this movie that I genuinely enjoy and I genuinely think is one of the reasons that makes this movie so great. So I think throughout this movie, you get as Robert spirals, the film sort of builds a sense that no one can be trusted and nothing is what it seems. And it taps into a very human and very real fear that everyone, I feel like, feels at one. That was a little redundant, but it taps into a feeling that everyone feels at least sometime in their life, and it's realizing that you are completely out of control in your own life. You have sort of no real control over how your life goes and how it ends. And I think that is another very real fear that people have within society, especially now. Siena's Music Mayhem segment. Siena's Music Mayhem segment. Siena's Music Mayhem segment. Yes, I added a little flair. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry if you didn't. So yes, the music in The Omen is such a huge part of why it still feels so unsettling. It's sort of teaching you how to be afraid before anything even happens. The score was composed by Jerry Goldsmith, who is one of the most influential film composers in history. So he really tapped into this is something evil, and you're going to feel how evil it is through the score. So I want to sort of give us a little bit of a baseline. Who exactly was Jerry Goldsmith? So he was born in 1929, and he became one of Hollywood's most versatile and innovative composers. So he scored over 150 film.
Perfect.
He scored over 150 films and TV projects, jumping between genres like sci-fi, horror, action, drama, anything. He tapped into it. So he also trained under the legendary composer Miklos Rosa, which is part of why his music has that very strong classical backbone. What is something that he really, really did, and he did well, is he blended sort of this old type of music with a newer genre of music. So he mixed traditional orchestras with electronic elements way before anybody else had the thought to. So he very much chose to be psychological over pretty sounds. So instead of making music that really sounded nice, he focused on how the music made you feel. So if he felt the scene was discomforting and it was uncomfortable, he made sure the music tapped into that uncomfortability to really push that forward. So he was also very much willing to get weird with his music. For example, for Planet of the Apes, he used very unconventional instruments and techniques, like he would blow into horns that did not have mouthpieces to get the sounds that he wanted. So some of his really big career highlights and big movies that he did the scores for were Star Trek, Alien, Planet of the Apes. He won an Academy Award for the Omen for this movie. And he was nominated 17 times across his career. He really wanted to not only create tension, but he wanted to make the film feel like it was biblical, like it was sort of inevitable. I'm gonna give one huge example of his score because I want to go more into sort of the history of how he made the score. So one of the biggest scores that were within this movie is Ave Satani, the sound of evil. So this literally translates to Hail Satan, which is very creepy, and it adds a creepiness level to this movie. So it's structured like a Catholic mass, but with Latin lyrics praising Satan instead of God. So the choir shouts phrases like Sanguis bibimus corpus edimus. We drink the blood, we eat the flesh. So this is flipping the Christian rituals into something that is satanic and much more sinister in this movie. So the aggressive chanting and the brass hits create a sense of ritualistic dread. And it was, it's something that feels very ancient and unstoppable. And it adds another layer to this movie that I think is incredible. So like I said before, he won the Academy Award for Best Original Score for this movie. And this was incredibly rare during the time because it was for a horror film. The score is also often cited as one of the greatest horror soundtracks ever composed. And I would agree so much and so heavily on this. If you're watching this for the first time, please really pay attention to the sound, the score during this movie. So some really interesting musical techniques that he used to make this so creepy is that he would invert religious music. So church-like harmonies, he would invert these and distort them. So it sounds familiar, but your brain really doesn't like it because it can tell something is off. So he would also use a lot of Latin chanting. So the choir often acts like a narrator, like almost, it gives the feeling like fate itself is speaking. So you also get a lot of dissonance and sudden hits. So you get the sharp, jarring orchestral stabs that are used during key deaths, like the decapitation scene. And this really became a blueprint for modern horror scoring. So this movie really redefined horror music, and it influenced films such as The Exorcist, which we did go over before, and later psychological horror films as well. It proved horror could be taken seriously in major awards circles, and this creepy choir and Something is Very Wrong is now such a horror staple because of this film. So this music still works because it doesn't react to the horror. It predicts it. It begins playing before anything horrific has happened. And so it gives you that feeling that something bigger is happening in this movie, even though, like, you're just like, I don't know what to do with this. It sort of gives you that horror and says, good luck, pal. This score isn't just the background in this movie. It's the voice. It's like the second feeling of Damien in this movie. So now, of course, we have Siena's fun facts. They're fun and they're facts, and you learn a little something. Siena's fun facts. Yes. Fun fact number 1. There were multiple lightning strikes during production. So both Gregory Peck and screenwriter David Seltzer had planes struck by lightning on separate flights during production. Peck was flying to London when his plane was hit, and Seltzer experienced the same thing, but on a different flight. So yeah, really creepy. Fun fact number 2. So there was a real life tragedy that was mirrored in the film. So special effects artist John Richardson later worked on another film in the Netherlands and was involved in a car accident. His passenger was tragically decapitated. So fun fact number 3, the baboon scene, those baboons actually went feral on set. So during the zoo scene, the baboons were supposed to act agitated, but they really went way beyond acting. They violently attacked the car carrying Damien Thorne, and the animal trainer reportedly said he had never seen them behave like that before. Fun fact number 4. A lot of churches refused to participate with this movie, which, yes, that makes a lot of sense. So because of the film's heavy use of satanic themes, many churches refused to allow filming or cooperation. So the production had to get creative with locations, and some religious groups protested the film before it was even released. So really, by doing this, even though they didn't want it to happen, they gave this movie a lot of free advertising and publicity. Fun fact number 5. So there's a such thing called cursed films in the horror genre, and even in like sci-fi circles. So after all these really creepy and sort of unsettling events, a lot of crew members also reported eerie coincidences and accidents, and the studio really leaned into these rumors and helped boost the film's mystique and box office success. So yeah, these are a cursed film in horror is usually talking about a lot of different and weird things that happen on set while filming it. So for example, on The Twilight Zone, the movie, there was the scene with the where the airplane crashes in the movie, and those people actually died in that plane crash. And so this is another example of a cursed film. The Poltergeist is another example. So that's what that means when I say this is sort of a cursed film in many horror circles. Of course, we're coming towards the end of this show, this episode. We have Scarometer. That meters as you get scared. Scarometer. That meters as you get scared. Yes, we have Scarometer, and this should not come as any shock to you. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. The lack of gore, or the very tasteful sort of gore that is included in this movie, is so absolutely freaking perfect. Another aspect of this movie is the different layers of horror that we get, the different lore that we get during this movie, the acting, the storyline, the score, all these different pieces that come together to make something truly beautiful is amazing. And I think it just shows you how much this movie was loved during the making and the filming and such. I think it was such a wonderful homage to horror, and it's truly where we get a lot of the horror themes in modern day. Thank you all so much for watching, and I am so happy that you came back for another episode, and I hope you stick around for next week's episode. If the Omen taught us anything, it's that evil can come from the most unexpected places. But next time, we're trading the Antichrist for something a little fluffier and somehow still terrifying. Get ready for Night of the Lepus, because nature is about to bite back. And remember, folks, don't split up and don't go to the basement. Bye.